I have over 100 houseplants and I love my plants and I love my collection, but if these plants were to die, I would not be repurchasing them anytime soon. Hi, hello, my name is Matt, and in today's video I want to talk to you about 5 plants that I wouldn't buy again. There is absolutely nothing wrong with these plants. I actually really like these plants. If I didn't like them, they wouldn't be in my collection because I am very strict about the plants that I keep in my collection, and I often go through my entire collection and see what brings me joy and see what doesn't bring me joy. And if a plant doesn't bring me joy, well, it's time to say goodbye. So these aren't necessarily plants that I want to get rid of or that I don't want to grow anymore. These are just plants that if they were to die somehow, by some coincidence, I wouldn't go out and purchase them again, at least not for a long time. With some of these plants, I have a hard time growing them, and some of them just don't fit me, don't fit my aesthetic, don't fit my space, but I also like them and don't want to get rid of them. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let me know in the comment section below, what are some plants that you have in your collection that you wouldn't repurchase again if they were to croak. And without further ado, let's get started. Grab yourself a cozy little drinkity drink. I am drinking a nice little chamomile tea, and this tea actually has like really cute little messages on the tea bag, which is very adorable. And this one says, "Be yourself, everybody else is already taken," and I agree. First on my list is, I think, a plant that is universally difficult. I feel like a lot of us struggle with this plant, and it is a plant that is truly gorgeous. The potential of this plant is insane, but it is just one of those plants that gives me a run for my money. And it is one of those plants that really just drives me insane. And I am talking about nobody else than Miss Philodendron verrucosum. This is such a difficult plant for me. And now, of course, if you're having a great time, an easy time growing this plant, I'm jealous of you. I am jealous of you. But I think that this plant, with my care and in my environment, we were having a lot of struggles. I restarted this plant numerous times, like at least 5 or 6 times at this point. This is my last ditch effort. These are some cuttings, these are some wet stick propagations that I am currently growing in semi-hydro, which is my first time trying this plant in semi-hydro. And if you've been on my channel for some time now, you will know that I have been really having a lot of success with semi-hydro, so that's why I wanted to try this plant in particular out in semi-hydro, because honestly, if I can grow this thing well, I know that semi-hydro is magic. Just kidding, of course it's not magic. There is no magical substrate. You can grow any plant successfully in any substrate. It just comes down to your care routine and your environment. And unfortunately, like I mentioned, me and this plant, we struggled. We struggled big time. This plant rotted a couple of times on me. It's a huge pest magnet, and philodendrons in general for me are really huge pest magnets. Like, usually whenever I have a pest outbreak, I know that my philodendrons are affected, whether that be thrips or spider mites. They have seen it all, and this one in particular has been a victim of both thrips and spider mites. Surprisingly enough, spider mites were actually more difficult to get rid of on this plant. Like, thrips didn't even do a lot of damage, but the spider mites really destroy this plant. I mean, y'all know how spider mites leave those like marks all over the leaves, and it just looks very sickly and unsightly. Well, that's what happened to this leaf or this plant, and it was looking ridiculously ugly. It was so bad. It was infested all the time, even though I was constantly treating it. I was constantly treating it, making sure that I was on top of it. There was a time in my life where I did heavily neglect this plant, but for the most part, I did try to get rid of the spider mites. It was definitely a battle. However, knock on wood, so far, this has been growing in here for, I would say, maybe 4-ish months. I think I potted it up into semi-hydro around fall, late fall, early winter. So it has been surviving the winter in semi-hydro. And obviously we are now entering the growing season. So I really hope that this thing will pick up in speed. And I would just like to have a healthy, nice verrucosum. I don't even need those huge, big leaves. Like, first of all, I don't even know where I would put them. They are beautiful, they are breathtaking, but I don't need them. I want like a medium-sized, nice-looking verrucosum, and I want those really cool fuzzy petioles. Honestly, the fuzzy petioles are probably my #1 feature when it comes to this plant. That and the really cool venation. So I don't need this thing to be huge. And that's another point that I want to make. I'm not going to be putting this on a moss pole. I really want to try to move away from moss poles as much as possible. Obviously, there are still plants that I love and that I want to size up. But for the most part, I really just want to move away from the moss poles because they are quite a lot of maintenance, quite a lot of money, and I would really like to just grow my plants as is. Another reason why I'm kind of trying to move away from moss poles is because while yes, moss poles are really amazing and they really help your plants mature, I realized that I cannot let every single one of my plants mature. Like, I have to be very selective about the plants that I do want to see like size up and get big, because I only have so much space and I only have space for so many big plants. So this one, I would be happy if this were to just be a medium-sized specimen living on a shelf. Like, I would be more than happy with that. We shall see. I'm honestly not I'm not hoping for anything when it comes to this plant because I just know how finicky it is, and I know that even like very experienced growers have a hard time growing this plant. Also, I am currently not seeing any roots on the outside of this pot. This is just potted in like a glass vessel in semi-hydro. And that's another point that I want to make, that verrucosum roots are really pathetic. Like, they are so small, they're so spindly, they are so prone to rotting, and I just have a hard time with getting some good, decent roots on this thing. And again, I know that's kind of the general consensus when it comes to this plant. I think that's also one of the main causes why this plant can be so difficult, because in order to have like a nice, healthy looking plant, you need a good, big, healthy root system. And this plant just doesn't have that. It just doesn't have a good, healthy root system. And I know that even when I was growing this on a moss pole, because I was growing it on a moss pole at one point, it had a hard time rooting into the moss pole, and I really had to make sure that every single node was flush against the sphagnum. So it's just a little bit more extra work that I'm not willing to put in for this plant. Like I mentioned, this is my last attempt. If this thing croaks, I do not plan on getting a new one, at least not while I'm living here. Maybe if one day I get to move and have a space with more light and more space and more whatever, maybe I would consider getting another one. I mean, there are a lot of really cool varieties. In particular, I like the sunrise or sunset or whatever it's called, the one that has like the really amazing, intensely colored, bright red back seal. I haven't seen that one available for purchase over here in Croatia or Europe, so I don't know. But yeah, the verrucosum, it's on thin ice. Let's just say that. I feel like my hair looks absolutely crazy, so just please ignore that. I'm trying to grow out my hair and I have a hard time managing it. Also, the weather is absolutely insane. We had like a huge thunderstorm during the night and it was showering in the morning, and now the sun is coming in and out, and it's just like, girl, what are you doing? So if the lighting is changing a lot, that's why. Next up on my list, we have a plant that I actually recently acquired, and that is my Apobalis acuminatissima. I think that's what it's called. I will definitely have the name on the screen. But yes, this is actually a plant that I acquired again somewhere late fall, early winter of 2025. I actually have an unboxing video of this plant, so I will leave that in the description below. If you haven't seen it, you can see my reactions and you can see how beautiful this plant looked when I unboxed it. But unfortunately, ever since, it just looks like poo-poo. It just looks like poo-poo caca, and honestly, I don't know. I want to give it a chance. I really want to give it a chance, because I do realize that I only had this plant for a very, very short amount of time, and I can't judge it from that short amount of time. Like, I cannot judge a plant from just owning it a couple of months, because honestly, I had plants that I had for years that only after like 1 or 2 years actually started growing and giving me nice growth. So I really hope that this is what's going to happen with this plant. This is currently in semi-hydro because, once again, whenever I struggle with a plant, my solution is a semi-hydro. And so far, she hasn't been doing amazing. Like, she lost a lot of her leaves. She did grow some new ones, but they are like quite small. Like, I think this was the latest leaf, which is not bad. Like, this is not bad. Just looks a little bit bleached, a little bit sickly, and that could be down to light. Like, maybe I am giving this thing a little bit too much light. This does live down there on my vitio shelf, and it is under a Amazon grow light, but it's not like directly under it. It's kind of pulled away. So I honestly don't know if it's due to light or maybe due to nutrients. I really don't know. Now, the reason why I actually put this into semi-hydro is because I believe that this is a very thirsty plant. I think this belongs in the same species or group as like peace lilies, schismatoglottis, homolominas. I think that's how you say that. So basically that kind of group, which are, I believe, plants that live by like riverbanks and stuff like that. I could be completely wrong. Please don't listen to anything I say because I never fact check myself. I'm too lazy. But I think I might be right. And if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me. But yes, from what I've heard, these are pretty thirsty plants. So I thought, okay, semi-hydro should be great. And yeah, so far it's not been great. So far she has just been kind of, I wouldn't say struggling, but she has been just kind of on a slow decline and not doing much of anything, to be honest. So I really just hope that this plant figures itself out. Maybe it's just one of those that really takes its time and it needs to actually firstly develop its root system. I did recently repot this into this Amazon self-watering planter. It used to be like just in a smaller little nursery pot that I had sitting in a reservoir. And when I did repot this, I did see that the roots were very healthy. So at least there is that. But other than that, I don't know, maybe she just needs some time, but I just wouldn't repurchase this plant if it were to die. And it is a very gorgeous plant. I mean, the foliage is really stunning. That like silvery, splotchy, kind of like Aglaonema-esque foliage. And then it has that really cool purple back. But honestly, it's just kind of behaving like a diva. And I am not here for it. Also, weirdly enough, this thing actually flowered like a month ago and it had so many flowers. It had at least like 10 to 15 flowers. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And they are not like the pretty flowers. They are the degular, ugly aroid flowers. So they're not even pretty. But I think the flowering process definitely took a lot of energy out of this plant. And maybe that's why it's looking a little bit rough, because I know for my alocasias, whenever they flower, they just tank so miserably and they take such a long time to recover. So honestly, whenever like my aroids flower, I'm always like, oh no. Because like I love flowers. I love when my Hoyas flower. I love when my begonia flowers. But when my aroids flower, it's kind of like, oh God, here we go again. And of course, the plants that I actually want to flower, like my Hoyas, they will not flower. Except my Bertonier, she's my golden child and she always flowers and I love her very much. But the rest of my Hoyas, girl, where are the blooms? Where are the blooms? It is what it is. I definitely will keep this in my collection until it dies by itself. And I actually plan to film a fun little video where at the end of the growing season, I will revisit all of these plants and we will see if they're still alive. And hopefully all of them will be doing a lot better. The next one, I honestly kind of feel bad about because God, this plant has handled so much neglect. I have put this into the darkest corners of the world. I have neglected this thing. I have not watered this thing for months on end, and it literally just lives in pitch dark blackness, and for some reason it still looks good and is giving me absolutely no troubles. It is my Rhaphidophora decursiva. I don't know what to tell you about this plant, but this is a fake plant, okay? This might as well be a plastic plant because this thing is indestructible. Absolutely indestructible. Like I'm telling you, this lives above me on this beam that goes across my studio space. It gets literally no light, but I had this plant in even lesser light. I had this basically in the darkest corner, and it, for some reason, didn't die. I never watered this thing. Like, I watered it, I think, the other day just because I was like, oh, I could water this plant. I haven't watered it probably since Christmas. Her leaves never wilt. Her leaves never yellow. Her leaves never brown. She just doesn't. She just survives. She just survives. And I mean, it is a very stunning, gorgeous plant. These can get really, really big and huge when allowed to climb. And I do actually have one growing up a moss pole, but I just don't have enough space for all of these moss pole plants. So I think that one is gonna be a plant that I will be taking off the moss pole and just growing it like this. I feel so bad. I feel so bad because this thing is truly just a trooper. Now, one thing that is annoying, but this is completely my fault. Okay, this is absolutely completely my fault. This thing will throw out runners, okay? This thing will throw out runners. It will give you these dinky little leaves. But listen, I'm not giving this plant any support for climbing, and I'm literally keeping it in the darkness. I mean, of course it's gonna run. Of course it's gonna throw out these dinky leaves. That is completely normal. But what is not normal is how much neglect this thing can handle. Like, it's literally Sansevieria level. Like, this is literally snake plant level, but without being an actual snake plant. I don't know. I really don't know. It's kind of hard to manage because it is very big. It's very bushy. It doesn't fit a lot of spaces. You know what? Actually, now that I'm actually kind of like looking at it better, and like in particular this leaf, like this leaf is so beautiful. Like, why am I not putting more care into this plant? Maybe I should. Maybe I should. Maybe I'm changing my mind. No, it's not a plant that I would buy again. And I don't think I will ever have to buy this plant again because I'm pretty sure that this plant will outlive me. Like, this is crazy. Do any of you guys have this plant? How do you manage it? How do you grow it? Like, can you size it up? Like, does this plant size up on just a bamboo pole? Or does it like just keep running? Because I don't want this. Like, I don't want all of these runners, and I continuously chop these runners. But if I could just like grow it on like a moss pole or a cocoa pole and have it like size up, maybe I would be willing to do that. So let me know if you have any experience with this plant. But yes, as it stands, as of right now, it's not one that I would repurchase if it were to die. But again, I don't think this thing will ever die. I will also mention these are pretty slow growers. Like, this will give me maybe a new leaf every couple of months. So these are slow growing plants. But again, I'm keeping it in like pitch darkness. So of course it's gonna be slow growing. Like, it literally doesn't get a speck of sunlight. So yeah, no shit, Sherlock. But I don't know, maybe it grows faster when you give it good conditions, but in my experience, it is a pretty slow grower. Also, I will say, the one time that I did try to give this plant some better conditions and put it into more light, I did actually burn it. I think you can see it on this leaf over here. And I think there must be another leaf. There we go. That is a good burn marks. So these do burn quite easily, so definitely keep them away from the sun at all times. But if you can give them like bright indirect light in a north-facing window, I think this plant would really like that. All that being said, I think I will keep it in the darkness. I mean, it's a nice filler plant. It really fills up that space nicely. It looks lovely. Yeah, I like the way that it cascades, and yeah. yeah, but maybe I will look into trying to give this plant some better conditions and actually size it up and have it growing nicely. We will see. Rhaphidophora decursiva, she is literally, this is literally a fake plant. Like this, literally a fake plant. The next one I am not gonna bring over because she is pretty big, and it is my fiddle leaf fig, or the Ficus lorata. I think we can all agree that the fiddle leaf fig is just a finicky diva, and she is not forgiving, okay? She is not forgiving. She is not a forgiving diva. Literally, if you move her anywhere else beside the spot that she's used to, she will yellow, she will drop her leaves, and it is just kind of a very divalicious diva plant. It's literally just a stick with leaves. It's literally just a stick with leaves, and I'm not here for it. I'm really not here for it, and it is not a plant that I would repurchase, mainly because it's a tree. It's a tree. Ficuses are trees. They're supposed to grow outside, not inside. Now, if I had a beautiful sunroom or like skylights or something like that, I would love to have a fiddle leaf fig. Like, I would love to have one of those like really cool little shapely fiddle leaf figs that just add such whimsy and forest vibes to your space. However, I don't have the space for that. I don't have the space for that, and I don't have the light for that. And those plants just need the light, okay? That is not a plant that can thrive in lower light. It can survive for some amount of time, but it can definitely not thrive in lower light. And mine is just, it's not looking great, and her leaves are not looking good. She has been attacked numerous times by spider mites and thrips. And I'm just, honestly, that is a plant that I would be willing to get rid of because it is really, it's not doing it for me. It is not doing it for me. However, I will give it one more chance. I will give it one last try, just like I do with the verrucosum, and I will put it outside during the summer. We are this close to having the night temperature reach 10 degrees Celsius, which for me is a comfortable temperature to move some of my plants outside, and I definitely plan on moving all of my ficuses outside. I did have my fiddle leaf fig outside 2 summers ago, but it wasn't like for the whole season. It was just like a couple of months because it had thrips, but now I plan to put it out really early and keep it like for the entire duration of the growing season. And I'm actually going to be chopping her. Like, I'm going to chop off all of her old leaves and also chop her top off to hopefully encourage some branching, and we will see. We will see how that will go. We will see if that will even do anything. I will put her in a very sunny spot, and I really hope that she can manage to recover and at least look good maybe during the growing season. Like, I would be fine if I could have this plant outside on my balcony looking cute during the growing season, and then in the winter if I just kind of overwinter it inside and like chop off all of its leaves and just repeat that cycle over and over again. I don't know if that's possible or not, but I'm gonna try. I mean, this hobby is very much about trial and error, and if you don't try something, you will never know if it works or not. But I do have a bit of a sentimental attachment to that plant because it is one of my first plant purchases. I bought this as a really tiny plant from IKEA 3 years ago, I believe, 3 or 4 years ago, and it was really just a ditty little thing. It was the Bambino variety or whatever they're called in IKEA, and I grew it out to be like my size, so I do have a bit of a sentimental attachment to it, so that's why I don't want to like toss it, but trust me, if I didn't have that attachment to this plant, this plant would have been in the compost a long time. And also, weirdly enough, mine is a bit more resilient. Like, it doesn't drop its leaves super crazy. And I do believe that's because I've grown it in my conditions and in my care from the very start. Usually when you get like those really big mature plants and, you know, they're grown in greenhouses, and then you put them in your dark homes and things go very wrong. So if you can wait, maybe try getting like a small fiddle leaf fig and putting it like in a sunny space inside your house, and maybe you'll have a lot more success. But for me, this is a plant that if it were to die, I would definitely not repurchase that plant. Definitely not. And especially not in this space. Like I would have to have a really, really nicely lit space in order to buy a fiddle leaf fig again. And the last one is also kind of bittersweet because I think this plant actually looks freaking amazing, and it's peaking. And it is my Syngonium Mojito, and she is so big, like so big, I can't even fit her in the frame. And this is a really, really nice plant. It is a very, very resilient plant. It grows like crazy. It can tolerate lower light. It is quite drought tolerant. It is, I don't know if it's like super pest prone. I do think I did have thrips on this plant, but to me it's like, I have thrips on all of my plants, so it's really not a big issue for me. But yeah, it doesn't show a lot of pest damage, let's say that. It is a very nice plant. It has very, very stunning variegation when it's healthy. Like, I think it has really, really some beautiful, beautiful leaves. Mine is kind of like a mixed bag. Like, some of the leaves are reverted and some of them are very, very nicely variegated. But yeah, the reason that I wouldn't repurchase this plant is I just don't vibe with it. I just do not vibe with this plant, and it doesn't fit my personal plant aesthetic. The leaves are very, very thin. The leaf shape itself, the growth pattern, it doesn't work for me. And in general, Syngonium is just a genus that I don't really like. I'm sorry. I know there is a lot of people who love Syngoniums, and for good reason. They are beautiful plants. And listen, just because I don't like something doesn't mean that you can't like something. And that is one thing that's so wonderful about this plant hobby, because there is literally a plant for everybody. And no, not all of us have to like the same plants, and every single plant does deserve love and care and appreciation. So it is great that we all have different tastes, because we can all give that love, care, and appreciation to different plants. And although I do appreciate this plant, I do think it's stunning and beautiful, in my collection I definitely treat this plant as a filler plant. It is just a filler plant for me, and if this thing were to die, I would definitely not repurchase it, and I don't think I would ever purchase Syngonium again. It's just like I mentioned, one of those genuses that I don't really care for. And I did have a Syngonium Frosted Heart that also recently got composted because it wasn't bringing me joy. Maybe you've seen it in some of my previous videos. I was growing it up on moss pole, and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna chop it up and restart it. And like, the more I looked at that plant, the more I was just like, you are not for me. And that's okay. That is absolutely okay. So I got rid of that plant. I'm not gonna get rid of this plant because I do think she is absolutely beautiful. This used to live on my vitro shelf under like a small little Scentsy clip-on light, but since it is growing so big, I have recently moved it into like a bit of a darker corner of my space because I felt like I needed some greenery in that space. Yeah, we will see how she will handle this. I'm honestly not sure. Like, the top vine of her, I'll show you this way. Where it used to be, this top vine actually grew like above the grow light. So this was basically growing in no light, and it was still giving me like really nice variegated big leaves. So I do think that this is a plant that can tolerate lower light, but we shall see. But it is just one that I wouldn't repurchase again if I had to. I really wouldn't. And I know probably a lot of you will disagree with me on this one, and that is fine. You are absolutely allowed to your own opinion, and I would actually love to hear your opinion. If you would get rid of these plants, or if you would repurchase these plants, what would you do with these plants? And also, if you have like any care tips or any styling tips for any of these plants that could maybe change my opinion, let me know as well, because listen, I'm open to a conversation. I'm open to trying out things, and I am that type of person that always says never say never, because you never know. Like, you never know. And I change my mind all the freaking time. Like, I used to hate Hoyas and now I'm obsessed with them. I used to hate the color yellow and now I love it. So my mind and my opinions always change, they always evolve, and I'm just that type of person who never stays the same. Like, I get very, very bored when things stay the same, and I think that also goes for my plant collection. So I just constantly rotate how I'm growing my plants, where my plants are growing, what plants I'm growing, which is obviously not the best thing if you want to have like big luscious plants, but for me it's not all about owning those big luscious plants. For me it is about the journey. For me this whole plant hobby is about exploring, it's about learning, and above all it's about having fun. With that all being said, I do hope you had fun watching this video. And if you did, please don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and hit that notification button so you're notified about every new video. I am gonna go outside right now because it is a beautiful sunny day and I wanna just bask in the sun while I can. I hope you're having an amazing, super fabulous day, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye!